Welcome back to the Insight in the Industry Podcast Season 4, Episode 3, your ultimate guide to the inner workings of the pharmaceutical industry. Get ready for exclusive interviews, insider tips, and expert analyses from the leading minds shaping the industry. You can check all that out at our website at www.insighttoindustry.com. Get ready to dive into the fascinating world of the pharmaceuticals. So let's begin. Welcome back to the Insight in the Industry. My name is Ravi, and I'm a second-year pharmacy student at UNC Eshelman School of Pharmacy. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Samantha Valliant, who is a Global Value Evidence Outcome Post-Doctoral Fellow at GSK. Dr. Valliant recently graduated from UNC's Eshelman School of Pharmacy in 2022, where she then directly entered her fellowship after graduation. Thanks for joining us today, Samantha.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So just to get the ball rolling, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey in the industry, and kind of, how you got where you are?
Sure. So my name is Sam. I'm currently a postdoctoral fellow at GSK and Rutgers HOPE. I'm on the Global Value Evidence and Outcomes team, and I primarily work in respiratory biologics. And so I attended the UNC Eshelman School of Pharmacy from 2018 to 2022. And then I started this fellowship July 2022. But prior to that, I actually never really thought that I was going to be a pharmacist. I actually thought I was going to be a veterinarian. I did my whole undergrad towards pre-vet. I worked at a veterinary hospital after graduation. I applied to vet school. So I was pretty much full in becoming a vet. And then kind of halfway through that, once I worked in the veterinary hospital for a couple of, or around 6 months, I decided that perhaps that wasn't for me. And I switched roles and I actually started working in clinical trials. And I was the site regulatory affairs person. And so I kind of got a glimpse into the pharmaceutical industry from that view. And kind of informed my decision to decline my seat in vet school and start a new application to pharmacy school. And I was, really excited and privileged to be able to get into UNC and have my pharmacy experience there. So going into pharmacy, I always thought I would come back to industry, but more in the setting of, clinical trials, because that was my previous experience. But it really was my second year at UNC. We have the US healthcare class, which kind of gives you a broad overview of how things work at that scale. And that really opened my eyes to like, what is value? Like, what is the value of medication? How do we define value? From what perspective? And, my eyes kind of lit up. And so there I was connected to the CMO, which I'm not sure if that is at UNC anymore, but was able to meet with a really good mentor now of mine, Dr. Ben Urich, and, really start to explore data analysis and outcomes research. And that kind of informed my path on where I wanted to go. And so ever since then, I was really honed in on health economics and outcomes research. I think it's a really, really cool space. It's growing. And that's what my fellowship is in.
Definitely. Thank you. Yeah, majority of our listeners are pharmacy students, and a lot of us, like myself, have now considered the path of industry, and it's very overwhelming in the sense that, for many students like myself who've had no prior experience in industry, what would you recommend to kind of get our foot in the door, or how did you differentiate when you came into pharmacy school? Oh, I came in now knowing that I was really interested in industry to some degree, but now there's options of clinical pharmacy or in insurance or, community pharmacy. How did you kind of navigate that pathway to go, well, I'm still, going to go for industry and I'm not really interested in clinical pharmacy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a debate as you go all the way through pharmacy school. And my biggest recommendation would be to explore everything. Like, even if you don't think that clinical pharmacy is for you, I would still recommend like go network with people at the hospital or, go talk to some of our professors or your professors. I think throughout pharmacy school, like I came in, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to go back to industry. But there was a period of time, my first and second year, as I got into more of the clinical portion of our curriculum, that I started to think, well, maybe clinical could be interesting, and I did explore kind of those career paths as well. And I think my big recommendation is like find out what you don't like. Like maybe you don't know what you do not like, but if you can start to narrow it based off of like I didn't really like that, then I think you can start to hone a path. And I think if you are interested in industry, having any sort of research experience is going to be extremely important for you within pharmacy school. And so I think the sooner that you can get your hands on any sort of research project, connecting with research mentors and seeing whether or not you like that. Regardless if you want to go into HEOR, you want to go into medical affairs, you want to go into regulatory affairs, like research is something that will always stand out on an application and on a resume. And so I think the sooner you get to kind of have that experience and then also know if you like that, that will help differentiate you. And then my last point would probably be, IPHO, AMCP, these are great organizations to go and figure out like what is industry, what is managed care, what do they do, things like that.
Definitely. And I was just about to ask you, kind of beat me to it. Like what activities and like organizations did you participate in while you were at, ESOP?
I was in IPHO, I was in AMCP, and my biggest involvement was actually Student Senate. AMCP and IPHO, I thought were really great organizations. I went to a lot of different kind of events as a member. That was kind of as far as my membership went. Um, but I was primarily involved in Student Senate. That's where I kind of did my deeper dive of like organizational involvement. But I did the PNT competition for AMCP. I think that's a great competition for anyone that's interested kind of in that managed care space or even HEOR because you do a lot of similar things that you may be doing in those roles. IPHO, I also helped co-coordinate the VIP case competition.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, didn't run it. My friend Hannah Feynman run it, but I assisted her. And so I got to kind of see that as well. And you get to see all the different functional areas work together and kind of what they do. I think if someone aspiring to be in industry, that would be a great way to start. You get a little bit of insight into different roles and you get to see how they work together and what that function performs. And I think that can help inform if you're interested or not in that.
Definitely. I also saw that you had a variety of internships, whether it was at Bristol Myers or at the Defense Health Agency. How did you,
Mhm.
first of all, navigate those, and what skills did you learn from them that you still kind of use today?
Yeah, so I knew so after second year, like I really knew that I was interested in data. I knew I was interested in real world decision making, policy, like how do we look at certain like real world data and how does that inform decisions? And so my internship that I did between my second and third year was actually at Pfizer and Harvard. It was a um, pharmacy informatics internship and so it kind of it's not directly related to HEOR, but it gave me a huge appreciation for data and like big data. And so for me, that was really interesting. I learned a lot about databases. I learned a lot about um, decision technology, like very clinical aspects of pharmacy that are being operationalized to improve outcomes, basically. And it is a portion of what pharmaceuticals also invest in. It's not directly where I am today, but it gave me an appreciation and kind of a foundation for data. And then going into my fourth year, there were some application rotations that you could take. And so I knew I wanted to get one in industry and I knew I wanted to get one in managed care because I was still trying to decide, do I want to go into industry or do I want to go into a residency, like a managed care residency? I wanted to understand the differences between them and how that related to me. So I was fortunate to get a HEOR rotation at BMS. And then the following month, I was also a extern at the Department of Defense managed care, so TRICARE. And that was a really cool experience. I got to back months see the differences between industry and managed care with respect to like HEOR. And that really helped inform me know that like I wanted to go into industry. Nothing against managed care, just it was a better fit for me.
No, definitely. And would you say that it was necessary for securing an internship to go into a fellowship for many students like myself? We still have the time to kind of navigate that and look through, what really interests us in the, pharmaceutical industry. But would you say that it was necessary to land a job or a fellowship in the industry? And if so, um, how did you reach out and network with these individuals?
Yeah, I mean, I think if from the earlier kind of your path, I think the better. But that's not to say that, if you're in your fourth year and you were dead set on going clinical and all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to go into industry. It's possible. I know there were many people in my class that fourth year who were 100% like, we're going to be clinical pharmacists. And they decided that that actually wasn't going to be for them. And they applied to fellowship roles and they got them. So, I will say, everyone has a different path and it's still very possible regardless of where you are. If you are really interested in something, you're really passionate about it, like I think that shows, and I think that you'll still be able to make it wherever you want to go. That being said, obviously, the earlier you can identify things, the more experiences you can get, those things will only benefit you. And so I think that, in my fellowship interviews, definitely my rotation at BMS came up, my internship at Harvard and Pfizer came up, my Department of Defense rotation came up. So like these things do come up because they're on your CV and they want to talk about them. But if they weren't on my CV, it's hard to say. Like, I'm not really sure if,
Yeah.
that was a determining factor. I think the feedback that I've gotten is really like, regardless of what area you go into, and I think this relates to both industry and clinical, whenever you're in an interview, like they want to know why. They want to know why this role, why this path, like, how did you get here? And so I think if you can clearly articulate that, then regardless of your experiences, whether or not they compare to someone else, like if you can really convince them, like, this is it, like, this is
Right.
why, I'm meant to be here, like, I think that you have a great shot.
I agree. And for any viewers listening right now, if you are in the same situation where you're a fourth or third year that haven't done any industry internships or got involved, we just had a podcast with Dr. Yan Wu. And I'm sure you know her. She was in your class. Episode 2, season 4. Go give it a listen. She kind of talks about her experiences by going into fourth year.
Yeah, I mean, she's a great example,
Yeah.
honestly. So
But another question I had was, did you ever consider the MBA? I noticed you didn't have it. A lot of students, at least at ESOP, currently are very pro on the MBA, and I think it's a very important decision, especially financially, and for the long term. How would you utilize that in what role in industry? So I want to gauge your perspective on the MBA.
yeah, I think it's a great question. I never had an interest in the MBA. I was more weighing the MPH. And actually, in my fellowship right now, I'm getting a master's. It's sort of equivalent to an MPH, but it's basically a master's in HEOR. It's called an MS HOPE. It's a master's of health outcomes policy and economics. And that's something that I'm doing in my 2-year fellowship. And at the end, I'll have. But that's more so related to kind of the role that I've gone into and where I aspire to be. Um, because it's very research focused. And although our pharmacy training has prepared me for all of the clinical aspects, all of the disease, things like that, but the actual research and statistics and things like that, most people are not excited about, but I am. That's kind of where this master's will fit in. For other people, I've seen, the MBA, I think can help a lot, but I think, it comes up to you as a person, whatever your goals are. And how you see that leveraging kind of into future roles. And also, like you said, financially, like, can your company pay for it? Does it make more sense to take it now? So I don't know. I know a couple of people in our class that did the dual degree. And so they got their MBA during pharmacy school. And I think that is economically better than just getting the MBA. But again, like if in the future, if your company will pay for it, that
Right.
is great. So I don't know. I don't think there's like a time limit, certainly it could make you stand out, I guess, on an application to say like you have a PharmD MBA, but I don't think it will hinder you if you don't have one to get into, an industry role.
No, definitely. And going off of that, for your day to day, if you don't mind, would you kind of describe to the viewers and I like what your day to day is, what you do at your fellowship, and what you've enjoyed most about it?
Yeah, so I currently so at GSK, it's not called HEOR, it's called VEO, so it's Value Evidence Outcomes. That's our department. And so as I said, I work primarily in respiratory biologics. And so over the course of my fellowship, what I've really enjoyed is the ability to really take ownership of a lot of different projects and things. There hasn't really been a lot of passive. It's been a lot of me being able to like step in and do things, which has been really exciting. Currently, I'm managing a couple of like retrospective cohorts, database studies. I have a couple of economic models. One of them is supporting the launch of a new product here in the US. So it's a budget impact model that will be reviewed by payers. And then I'm also helping out with there's a global value evidence dossier that's also going to be used for submission globally for the launch of this product. And then on the respiratory side, I'm also doing another value evidence dossier, and then a couple of post hoc analyses. And so I'm getting a breadth of different project types, different study methodologies. VEO is very focused on really supporting the value proposition of a product using real world evidence,
Right.
comparative effectiveness, cost effective modeling. And so sort of everything outside of the clinical trial that can help support either for a regulatory submission, HTA submission, or just to, for MSLs to use, like basically just evidence generation is what we do, and in a lot of different forms. So I'm getting a lot of exposure to that. And then there's also, along with that, there's a lot of strategy, aligning cross-functionally with, medical, with commercial, with market access for like what are the overall strategic goals of our product and how does VEO or HEOR, what can we do to fill some of the gaps that they're hearing, from payers, from physicians, from patients. What I think is really cool and what I really enjoy about this role is that we get the impact, or we have the ability to impact on sort of an economic level by generating that evidence on a clinical value, with different database study, prospective study, different study designs. And then also patient reported outcomes is a big part of what we do. And so we have a whole team dedicated to patient-centric outcomes. So you really get to look at what is the value of this drug, but from a lot of different perspectives, and that can help with a lot of whatever stakeholder you're talking to. So I've gotten a lot of exposure on that as well.
No, definitely. That sounds awesome. For our UNC pharmacy student listeners, do you believe that the curriculum prepared you for this? And if so, like what courses were most helpful to you? And was it like a strong learning curve from going from, didactic and, your appies and IPpies to, something very, very different that, in my personal opinion, I don't think that the curriculum at UNC directly kind of prepares us for, but, there are definitely some courses that have pieces that could set us up for a role in this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. I think there was a decent learning curve coming in. And the one area that I do think that UNC prepares us well is they train us like clinical pharmacists and they train that hard into us. And so, you know, I've gotten, my main primary disease state that I work on is severe asthma,
Yep.
which is a pretty bread and butter disease state. So, truly did not need to really look up or like I knew that disease state
Right.
back and forth because of, our
Cool.
schooling. But I think the other ones, like there are some more rare diseases that my asset can cover, and then also moving into some oncology products. I definitely have been able to see that I can pick up like a new disease state very easily. And I think that is because of kind of all of the clinical training that we've had. So I think that's good. Um, I obviously like, study design methodology, statistics, like that's not really something that we're taught. And that's something that my master's is there to support and help with. So that I think is majority of the learning curve. But to your point around coming from a school environment where everything is measured, everything is, very structured to now moving into this fellowship, I think there is a learning curve. In that respect, because you're working day to day, but you're not working for like an A. You're not working
Right.
for, that direct feedback. You're not going to get it on every assignment or everything you do. I think, getting into more of a corporate environment where you need to learn to like take feedback on the fly, um, set up designated touch points. Like you really just need to work with your team, work with your supervisor, understand like how you're going to receive feedback, understand how best to communicate, what you need. I think there's a little bit of learning curve there because it is very different than, although it's a training program, it's very different than, our pharmacy curriculum and our pharmacy school. So not one that you can't overcome, but
Yep.
it's definitely a different environment.
When you were looking at fellowships, what did you look for? Obviously, you looked at probably some with the role that you're interested in, but did you look into like the environment you're going to be put under, such as like how to get, feedback and what kind of working environment and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like for those people that are looking for a fellowship, like step one, identify your therapeutic or not your functional area. Like where do you want to be? And I think once you're able to narrow that down and then you start looking at programs that have those functional areas, I reached out to a lot of current fellows that work there and I try to just have really honest and like get their feedback on their experiences. Um, and a lot of them will give it to you. Like they will give you very honest feedback, which is great. And then once you get into the interviews with the preceptors who are going to be your future, preceptors, I think it was there that I really identified, I could see myself working with this person. I could see like we have similar personalities, we have similar communication styles. Like I don't think it I think it was very helpful that I was able to have those honest conversations with those preceptors and understand like, oh, could I see myself working with this person every day for the next 2 years? And then could I also, is this person someone who I think is going to help me grow? Because at the end of the day, like that's sort of their role in a sense, like to help you step into this new role, help you acclimate, help you grow into that, next person that can go on and get that senior manager, associate director job. So, um, it may feel uncomfortable to sort of ask like what's your communication style but
Right.
I think it shows that you're interested and you're very serious and you are actually vetting this program, which I think people like because they want to see that you're taking it seriously.
I agree. And would you say when you were applying to all these fellowships, what was that process like? Like, how did you even begin? For our, third and fourth year listeners that are maybe considering a fellowship, how would you, or what advice would you give them while you're going through that?
Yeah. I really didn't like I always thought I would go into a fellowship. Once I figured out like HEOR was kind of where I wanted to fall. I
Yeah.
was pretty certain by the end of third year, moving into fourth year. So the thing with fellowship, that hopefully everyone knows is that the application timeline is getting earlier and earlier and earlier. So really around when I was planning for my fourth year, I think you need to be a little strategic. So if you do get an industry rotation and you know that the application timeline for fellowships opens around September, I would really try to get that industry rotation either like May, June, July, August. So you can have it before you move into your application cycle. So going into fourth year, like I planned that my BMS rotation would be in July, my Department of Defense rotation would be in August, and I was fortunate to be able to get my schedule that way. So I had kind of these relevant experiences right before I went into interviews. And I was also able to get letter of recommendation from both of those preceptors, which carried some weight in my applications. So I think there's a little bit of planning that needs to go into that. But throughout July, August, September, that's when I was reaching out to fellows, when I was like looking through programs. IPHO, actually, if you're a member, a national member, I think you have access to sort of like this database that they put out each year. So you can see all of the recruiting positions. So, finding your functional area, clicking, just going through those brochures, keeping a list. So that's what I did. And then I narrowed it down to, I applied to 10 programs and, had people review my CV ahead of time. So it's really that summer before or like during your fourth year that I think you can do a lot of prep to like get yourself ready for the applications. And then once they open, it's kind of just you put them all in and you wait to see what comes back. Some good advice that I got was do not apply to more programs than you would want to accept in a sense. So like if you
Right.
apply to a program, like be prepared to accept that program should you get an offer. Um, a different way of saying it is, just don't apply to a program just to apply. Like really think through, like, is this a program that I think that I'm going to enjoy, that I'm going to grow? Because you don't want to be in a position where you're just accepting an offer to accept it. you're not going to get anything out of that. They're certainly not going to get anything out of that. So like I would be really intentional with the programs that you apply to, knowing that like you would be really happy if you got a position there.
Yeah, definitely. For our, P1s and P2 students, do you have any advice for them as they kind of navigate their beginning of the pharmacy career?
I think like you're in the time where you truly just need to like explore everything. Like even if you think, oh, I'm 100% going to go into industry, I think that's awesome and like keep that, but don't let that like stop you from exploring other career paths because at the end of pharmacy school, you want to know like, okay, I checked off community, I checked off ambulatory, I checked off like
Right,
I know this is where I want to go. And it'll just build your story when you get into those interviews and they ask you why this fellowship, why this program, why this career. And you'll have a really great answer because you'll have moved through it in a sense that you'll be able to say, like, I am so sure that this is it for
right,
me. And so people told me when I was a P1, P2, like, go explore, go see everything, go, like, don't say no. And at the time, I was like, like, I just need to be focused. Like, I don't need to, but
right.
truly, like, I followed as much as I could their direction. And I can now see on the other side like the benefits of that because I think the more you can get exposed to everything, the more you can touch things, like you'll know whether or not you like them. And I think if you do, like, don't shy away from it because even though you had like a preconceived notion of maybe I want to go in this direction, like you never know, you could find something else that you love and enjoy more. So,
That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's all I have. First of all, I want to thank you for your advice, your time. I'm sure our viewers and myself we definitely appreciate it. And having a different perspective on the pharmaceutical industry, one also being from graduating from ESOP and being a recent alum, that definitely helps us kind of navigate our own pharmacy career. So thank you so much for your time and experience.
yeah, no worries. Happy to be here. If anyone ever has questions, feel free to, reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn. Always happy to chat. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll make sure to put the LinkedIn in her podcast description so all you viewers can click that as well. Thank you for watching our videos. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications to keep up with our latest content. Your support means a lot to us.